Well, hey, Madam Leader, welcome to our podcast, our little podcast here. It is so great to see your smiling face. You're now the minority leader in the state house, and I'm just curious of your thoughts on that as a leadership position versus your time in the Mesa County Commission and the leadership opportunities you had there. What are the differences? What are the similarities?
Well, thanks, Mark, and thanks, Kyle, for having me on. I'm so excited to be on your inaugural podcast. So incredibly honored.
As you should be. I mean, this is a big effing deal, right? I mean, come
Yeah,
on.
a few years from now, when we're syndicated, you'll be a trivia question.
Great.
Exactly.
I want to put it on my resume. First inaugural podcast guest speaker.
You might want to hold on to that resume thing for just a little while because we want you to actually get jobs as a result of this, not the other way around.
Exactly.
All right. Well, yes. Unfortunately, I've got plenty of jobs right now, so don't need to brush that resume off yet.
That's good.
To answer your question, Mark, clearly I wasn't expecting to be in the minority leader position as quickly. I do think that my years of experience as both a county commissioner and all of the political work that I've done since 2008, really did make me a good leader in that position. And what I'm really proud of was the ability for me to build relationships with each one of our caucus members and try to bring them together and unify this session. And I think that's what you saw. Especially, I don't know how much you saw of it on the outside. I'll be curious to hear. But on the inside, it felt good. It felt like all voices were heard. Everybody came to the table, and we all bring different perspectives and backgrounds and experiences to this position. And so making everyone feel valued for that experience, I think, was really important. So I will say the feel of session, at least on the inside, definitely a good feel.
Yeah, at least from my perspective, you guys are obviously there every day. My perspective is that it was much less combative this year than last year. And I think there was a big fear that it could end up being worse, but it sounds like you were able to work within the system and work with the other side a little bit more to get some stuff done.
Yeah, I definitely felt that way. I would much rather fight Democratic policies that I don't agree with and fight amongst my caucus members. And I think that's what we saw. We saw Republicans coming together. And I have said this for years, and I can tell you time and time again where this is held to be true. But when Republicans unite, we are able to get more done together. And even the Mighty 19, we were able to get a lot of good work done this session.
Let's talk about that for a couple of minutes because most people don't realize, it seems like you've been around Colorado politics forever. And, just kind of based on the gravitas you brought to the state house, it seems like you've been there for a long time too. But really, this is your first session or you're still in your freshman term, your second session of your freshman term. You started off as the assistant leader, and then, due to unforeseen circumstances, the leader ends up stepping down, and you take that role over in your first term in the state house.
Yeah, not the way I anticipated taking the state house. It's funny. Sometimes I'll joke. It's actually a Democrat on the other side of the aisle. And sometimes when I make mistakes, I'll text her and I say, hashtag still a freshman. Like, there's still a lot that I don't know that I'm learning. And I wasn't able to sit in the back row and kind of take it all in and try to figure it all out. I came in the second position, obviously due to circumstances nobody could have anticipated, and then quickly moved up to the first position. So I'm incredibly grateful, though, that people have honored the experience that I bring, the hard work and dedication that I have to the Republican cause. I mean, that's why we're here, right? And really want to help the people. And so being able to do that as a united caucus, I think, is really important.
Well, I can tell you, I've had an opportunity to look at this from the outside and also from the inside. I was in this position a few years ago. And I think for me, the thing that I kept saying is I was at the under the gold dome with you day after day during this legislative session. I just kept thinking to myself, I would not want to manage those 18 other people. Just the, you know, there are a lot of, let's just say it this way. There are a lot of challenging personalities in your caucus and a lot of things you have to overcome in order to get Republicans rowing in the same direction to then work on good policy for the people of the state of Colorado.
No, I agree. I think again, this is where, I use this example a lot. We've had such really great caucus members. I need a Representative Ken DeGraff to talk at the microphone while Representative Don Wilson is working on amendments and trying to help me negotiate it with the Democrats. I think each one of us has our place in this caucus, and we all bring different values and experiences. But what I think we saw is that we all saw where we fit in the puzzle, and we did that together. And so I'm incredibly proud of our caucus and the work we were able to do together.
That's great. What do you feel like was the most significant legislation that got passed?
There's a couple of pieces. I always hate those questions because what's significant to me might be significant differently to someone else. One of the pieces of legislation that I was on with Senator Lundeen was the income tax reduction bill. It is something that Republicans have been trying to bring forward for years, had not had that opportunity. As we know, during the Proposition HH debate that I was able to be a part of with the governor, he said, I would really like to work on income tax reduction. He has said it in his State of the States for years. And I told the governor, you have the power to do this. Why not now? So I was disappointed initially. I had a bill to reduce the income tax with Representative Scott Bottoms from Colorado Springs. And it failed in committee. And I told the governor, I had a meeting with him the week after and said, hey, so sorry I couldn't get your Democrats on board with your plan to reduce income tax. And then towards the end of session, there was this opportunity to actually bring income tax reduction forward. And so I'm personally incredibly proud of all of us for continuing to hold the governor's feet to the fire on something that he says that he wanted to do and that Democrats couldn't rally around until the very end.
How about let's ask it like this? What did you like about the session?
What did I like about this session?
I mean, it could be the food. Who knows?
It was not the food. I'll say that. And I'm gonna start, and this sounds kind of fun, but I come from a big Italian family, and family is everything to us. So
It's about food then.
it's about food sometimes, but it's about
Okay.
people. And so first and foremost, I love my caucus members. I really truly do, and I'm just really proud to serve with them. And the relationships that you get to build in the broader, in the lobby, across the aisle with the Democrats. I think, we were talking about being a freshman. My first year, we're still kind of all learning each other. And building those relationships are hard. But then in the second year, I felt more valued in the experiences that I brought, even to Democrats who would say, listen, I know you're not going to like this legislation. You're probably not going to vote for it. But is there a better way to get to where we want to go? What does implementation look like? Where does your experience say we should be going? And regardless, I probably didn't vote for that piece of legislation, but having those relationships and building that trust across the aisle and within our caucus, I think that was the best part for me. That's the part I like the most.
Kyle, that is something I totally get. I can remember my time there. People, kind of ask about that. And it's like, where does a 40-year-old knuckle dragging Republican from Colorado Springs, me, get to hang out and become friends with just the epitome of a, tree hugging, Boulder liberal, Birkenstock wearing, like Claire Levy, again from Boulder, and we got to be great friends. We didn't agree on a whole lot, but at least we got to be friends in the process. And so I think that's it's kind of hard for people to understand that you can duke it out in the well and then be friends after it's all over, Kyle.
No, I've always been interested, especially at like the federal level, at just how divisive things have become. And I remember doing some research a few years ago on it and reading something that one of the reasons for the divisiveness is they felt like a lot of that the activities or whatever that allowed the representatives and their staff to become friendlier was detrimental to being able to come together and get things accomplished. And so I totally get that. I think if you can understand somebody on that level, probably is it a little bit easier to negotiate some things.
Yeah, I've heard Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC get together on Tuesdays for drinks. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke. I don't think that happens. All right, Rose, what did you hate about the session?
Besides the food.
Besides the food. I'm sorry, Madam Leader.
I did hate the food. I want to throw that out there on the whole Italian premise. I think, the long nights are really hard. And in that last, couple of weeks of session where we worked 10 days in a row, it's too much togetherness for everyone. And the other part of that is bringing forward big pieces of legislation in those final days. I think some of it is necessary and had to be done, but it's not the ideal way to make policy. And so I do wish while we were having those conversations, property tax comes to mind. We were having those conversations this last session, then the horrible special session. And so we all did come together very early on in session and say, okay, how are we going to deal with property taxes? But the time that it takes, especially in the limited time that you have there, the time that it takes to actually pull a plan together, get some consensus and roll it out, it just takes time. And while I don't advocate for any more than a 90-day session personally, I think 120 days, it's hard to get through some of your big policy pieces in the way that I personally would like to see them.
And we'll talk about that 90-day session. It's ballot initiative coming forward, perhaps. So we'll talk about that in just a minute, but please continue.
I do think we spend too much time together. So I think the last, someone had mentioned, the last 10 days and how much time we were together. And when you're living in that moment, I had forgotten that we had been together for 10 days. And so I was like, oh, wait, we haven't had a break in 10 days. And that's real. Those days at the legislature, they're just long and hard. But I think, we were able to get some really important policy done before the end of the 120 days.
Well, and Kyle, let's talk about those big pieces of legislation. I think, and Rosa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the property tax bill, came forward. The first version of that came forward with about 8 days to go. It was 85 pages long, which, note to self, don't spend hours and hours reading an 85-page bill when you know it's not even going to be introduced. I spent way too many hours on something that was never going to happen, but, kind of needed to do it and make sure I understood it in case that was a piece of legislation that came forward. But ultimately, this idea, this property tax idea, and please, Rose, we're going to have you kind of explain it to us, but this idea comes forward and we need to fix it from valuations from previous years, and comes forward with 8 days to go in the session, never introduced the bill, and then with 3 days to go, the version that ended up passing gets introduced. Is that right?
That is right. Again, after months of conversations and dialogues with local government, because, I like to remind everyone, and Mark, you know this, and Kyle, I believe you know this, that the state does not rely on property tax to develop its budget. It's local governments that rely heavily on property tax in order to build their budget and deliver essential services. So making sure local governments were part of the conversation, I think, is really important. And there was even talks at one point about a special session. Should we have a special session? Which no one thought was a great idea, to be honest with you, but it would have bought us a little bit more time. In the end, I think enough stakeholders came together, and And I like to say this all the time. It's not the perfect plan. It's not the plan that perfect, like, honestly, if Republicans were in charge, is probably not the plan we would have brought forward. But we have to find the middle. And I'm very confident that this is the middle. And the biggest part, the residential part, is incredibly important. But I think the biggest part is the commercial side. Because as you both remember, when the whole Gallagher repeal was happening, I was personally advocating against Gallagher repeal, not because Gallagher was perfect, but because we needed to know what the replace was. And it was basically, let's just repeal it and we'll figure it out later, and the legislature can do this. And I disagreed then. I personally disagree now that the legislature is in the best position to be able to come up with a property tax solution. But it is what the people decided. And they gave that power to the legislature to do something. And we did some band-aids before my time, but did some band-aids in those years, and then came forward with this proposal, which again, I think, while not perfect, is a good segue, especially for commercial businesses. So it was commercial businesses that led the Gallagher repeal, because property tax burden was being put on commercial business owners. And so now what we're going to see is where, property tax rates were 29%, and now we're at 27, but could go back up to 29 if nothing was done. That now we have a plan in place that over the next 2-year period, property tax on commercial will go down to 25%. And so I think that, there's definitely some smoothing that needs to happen. We could talk all day about whether local government should get backfill or not, or to what levels. But in the end, I think, again, while not a perfect plan, I do think it's the middle that we needed to give some property tax relief to the people and to our business owners.
Yeah, I agree. What I think the other big issue was the trial lawyer caps. What transpired on that?
And I came to that game a little bit later than maybe most people. I knew that there were a lot of conversations happening. There were some ballot questions that were going to be coming forward. And, we wanted to make sure there was, again, that we found the middle. And so that was a great compromise between industry.
Maybe before we get too far into it, just to kind of explain what the caps issue is.
Okay. So what the ballot initiative sought to propose were basically unlimited caps on tort liability. And so what this compromise came to was to elevate the caps, and I can go into all of those details if people care, but really it elevated those caps, but still kept caps in place as opposed to unlimited. And I think that was a place where everybody felt the most comfortable, and made those ballot initiatives go away that could have had a real hurting on industry. And, we want to make sure we protect people, and that if they are injured, that they have the ability to recover to the level they need to. But there had to be a middle. And so finding that middle was really important.
Yeah, and Kyle, here's basically how I understand it. Rose, please correct me if I'm wrong. Kyle, if you understand something different, I'd like to know that too. But
probably not.
This issue was, kind of shaped up to be one of the bigger issues of the session. It kind of started early. I know there was a little bit of legislation, just couldn't really get anywhere with that. Negotiations weren't going anywhere. But the issue is this, and it's that in Colorado, you get into an accident, you harm somebody in your car, there are, in certain circumstances, there are caps in place as to how much somebody can sue you, right? And the ballot initiatives that they'd said, the trial lawyers had said, listen, if we can't figure this out legislatively, we're going to go to the ballot. And if we go to the ballot, you're not going to like what we're going to do at all, because we're going to get rid of the caps completely. No caps in place at all. So you get into an accident, we're going to be able to sue you for a gazillion dollars and not have any sort of statutory cap on that. Do I understand it correctly?
Yes. You articulated it very well.
Well, it's what I do. I used to be a trial lawyer. No, I'm only kidding. I didn't used to be a trial lawyer at all. Although actually I'd say I was, because I was a deputy district attorney. And so I tried cases in court, and that's some sort of a trial lawyer, I suppose.
Yeah, your JAG experience, right?
Yeah, there you go. But but the issue with that piece of legislation, or the issue there was, if those ballot initiatives would come forward, and it looked to me like all of the polling data said, hey, um, these things are going to pass if the trial lawyers bring them forward. Well, we couldn't be in a circumstance where we ended up with no caps,
Yeah.
and that's what the legislation proposed to resolve.
Yes, it was a good compromise.
Do you remember
So
what the compromise? Do you have any of the details on the compromise?
I can get that for you in a second if you would
Well,
like.
here's yeah. I mean, and here's kind of what I understand happened. And just correct me if I'm wrong. Um, Caps went up on kind of general liability from 300,000. Like, and my understanding is this hadn't happened in 30 years. Caps had not been raised in the state of Colorado in over 30 years, and so they went from $300,000, and they're going to kind of graduate to 875,000 over a 5 year period. Little bit of different stuff if somebody dies in an accident. So you whack my arm off, I can sue you for up to $875,000 in non-economic damages. But if you kill me, then I can sue you for like 1.5 million.
All right. So, yes, basically the non-economic loss or injury would go from 250,000 to 1.5 million. Wrongful death damage cap will be now 2.125 million and adjusts based on inflation. And then it also increases medical malpractice wrongful death damages limitations to 1.575 million over the course of the next 5 years. So
Got it.
that's really what you said.
Wow, I'm surprised I remembered as well as I did. So, all in all, people have asked me, hey, what did you think about the legislative session? And I've said, listen, if you'd said at the beginning of the year, this is what you were going to end up with, you can choose that, or you can choose what's behind door number two. I'd take what we got all day long, because I think at the end of the day, we ended up in a much better place than anybody thought we were going to at the beginning of the legislative session. And so with that, give us some winners and losers of the session.
Um, Honestly, I think one of everyone's really focused on the Senate, right? Because there's a one vote difference, and it's really important that. Is it a one vote difference? I'm sorry.
No, in the state Senate?
Yeah, it's just one seat that can make the difference.
No,
Being the
it's
super minority. That's what it is.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
If we lose one more, if Republicans lose one more seat, we could go to a super minority. That's right.
Okay, just being clear. So the House is in the super minority. I think it's really difficult for us to get a lot killed in the House. But we were able to get some pieces of legislation killed. One was 1460, which law enforcement was all up in arms about. And it was to them an affront to the law enforcement community. They wanted to have more stakeholding, more conversations. And I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who said, "Hey, actually, someone in El Paso County, who said, 'Hey, will you be able to kill this in the House?'" And I said, "The assistant majority leader is on this bill. I think it's going to be very difficult for us to be able to kill it in the House, especially in the super minority." And yet, we were able to come together with Democrats who also thought more time needed. Not that necessarily the policy was bad, but just more time to vet the policy was important. I think we'll see something come forward next year. But you saw Republicans and Democrats come together, and that did not go to the Senate. And I think that was really important. So I think the House, as much as everyone loves to focus on the Senate, and I am the minority leader of the House, so just want to throw that back out there. I do think that you saw a lot of good work being done on the House side to even bring amendments forward. We brought forward more amendments that were accepted this year than in past years. At least that's what I've heard. And so making bills that the policy isn't quite right, and really trying to work together. And Democrats worked with us on those policies. I think those were the big wins that you didn't necessarily see outside of the building, but inside, I think you can definitely see where we made bills a little bit better before they even went to the Senate. So I would say that the House is the big winner on that. Um, Biggest loser, I'm going to say oil and gas. I have been involved in the oil and gas industry advocating for their best interests for a long time, longer than I'd like to admit at this point. But the fact that, and this is where elections have consequences and elections matter. They too came together and had a deal that Republicans were sitting in the room saying, "Really, is this what we want to do? We want to make sure we protect oil and gas jobs. We're going to support the industry, but putting fees on oil and gas, I just think that's wrong." And so while we didn't vote for the bill, we worked with industry to help protect their interests. And so that's where elections matter, right? Elections have consequences. If we are able to eventually gain back some more seats, bring back some more balance, I think those pieces of legislation, those sort of deals
Mhm.
will stop happening. And so I do feel bad for my friends in oil and gas for the sacrifices they have had to make just to get through this session.
So you bring up a good point, talking about again, I think it's 46-19 split right now. It's a super minority. The goal of trying to get back some seats to obviously be able to make it a little bit easier to fight some things in on the House side and everything. And I think you're the chair of the House Leadership Fund, right? Is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So just so you know, I'm a former Republican. I'm unaffiliated now. But I'm
He's one of
curious.
those.
I was going to say, I want to delve into that more.
Yeah.
the But what do you feel like you and the party needs to do on a state level to be able to start to win back some of those seats? I saw an article the other day where somebody in the House, one of your colleagues, said they think the Republicans can get back to 25 to 27 seats over the next in November. That's a 6 to 8 seat gain. What do you feel like has to happen, or kind of what's the strategy to accomplish that?
So I want to start with I don't throw out numbers of seats that I believe we will get because I don't like to raise any expectations or false hope, right?
Yeah.
With that, I have a lot of real hope. And I think that we do have a lot of opportunities. If you look at the last cycle election results, there were about 6 seats that were lost by 750 votes or less.
Wow.
So when the Democrats say we have a mandate, we are in the majority, we're not even just the majority, but the super majority. Let's just be clear here that there was not that clear mandate in at least those 6 races, right?
But real quick, I've always said this has been as much about Republicans fucking up as Democrats getting a mandate. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Um, I wasn't there, really, but I tend to agree generally that sometimes we can do better than we do. And it's always a learning curve. But I do think that we have some really good messages that we can lead with. And I think it is really important. I personally believe that while Colorado's purple, what really the people want to see from us is more balance. They don't like 46-19 any more than we like being 46-19.
Yeah.
And so, what we have to do is convince them that our policies or what the Democrats have done is not in alignment with what they want to see for Colorado, that it's not balanced. And so, you see like this increase in fees. I mean, part of my frustration with the property tax conversation is you'll always hear on the other side, our property taxes are so low, some of the lowest in the country. But they forget to add on all of the fees, the nickels and the dimes and the dollars and that continuously get added now to rental cars, right? And you oil and gas, like we just talked about, everything costs more. And I think people are really hurting. And what they want to see are solutions that matter. And I think Republicans can bring forward those solutions. And so I'm hoping that we can message. Mark doesn't agree with me. You don't think?
No, I don't disagree with you. What I don't agree with is that we do that well. I mean, we say that this needs to be about bringing forward good policy, but then it seems to me it is nothing but Republicans fighting with Republicans. We don't pick necessarily the right Republicans for the right districts, because not every district is a Colorado Springs uber right wing district. Sometimes they are middle of the road districts like Kevin Priola's in Brighton and in Adams County, right? But we ridiculed that poor guy so much as Republicans. He's like, fine, I'm done. I'm out. And it seems to me, I'll go back to what I said before. This is, the problem is this. It's not that Democrats have a mandate in the state, but it's that we do such a good job of fucking it up on our own and shooting ourselves in the foot that we can't win. And we hamper ourselves. And then we come up with these policies. And I know that this isn't you, and I know this isn't where you are, but we sort of come up with this idea that, hey, if only we get more pure as a party, that's what's going to get us further down the road. I couldn't disagree more. This is one of the things that irritates me to no end. And I wish that we would get back to the big tent philosophy for Republicans. Because I think if we do that, your message is a good one, and that's what's going to stem the tide. It seems to me you're kind of fighting with one arm tied behind your back, right? You've got to fight against what's happening at state level and also what's happening at the federal level. Sorry to go on such a diatribe there.
I don't necessarily disagree. I will say I've been doing party politics since 2008. And what I would love to see is Republicans fighting Democrats.
Amen. Your lips to God's ears.
Policies for sure, right? Not the people, but the policy. And not each other. And I'm not going to outside voice a lot of what is inside my head as a reaction to what you just said, Mark.
You're much smarter than I am.
No, just in a different position. But when I talk to Republican groups, or just even business groups, what I think the lesson for us is, if we truly want to win, which is a bigger, broader conversation, but if we want to win, I think that we have shown where when Republicans unite, we are able to win, right? Proposition H8, 60-40, the governor was the lead on it, and we were able to push that back. And how did we do it? We did it by activating our grassroots networks, by having neighborhood barbecues, by talking to people about the issues that really matter to them. And I started off as a grassroots activist and am still one at heart. I still truly believe that is the recipe for success. But we have to, as you just said, acknowledge that all of us have a role in this party, and our role is not the same. And that's okay. There is a place in this party for all of us. And so how we do that is a larger, broader conversation than just one podcast. But I do think that there are people who are committed to doing that. And it is where I definitely would like, at least on the House side, this little piece that I get to control, for lack of a better word, or lead, I guess I should say. And this little part that I get to lead, that is how we are leading in the House.
Yeah, and I'll say I agree with you mostly. I'm not sure there is a place for all of us in it. I don't feel necessarily there's really a place for me in the Republican Party anymore. I've been called a rhino, Republican in name only, so much I think I'm starting to grow a horn. And then I kind of sort of challenge people. I'm like, hey, tell me what is rhino-ish about where I stand on any position. Pro-life, pro-gun, pro-limited government, pro-property, private property rights for people. You know what I'm not? I'm not pro the election was stolen. And because I'm not pro the election was stolen, I'm somehow a rhino. And I don't know that there is a place for me in the party. I mean, obviously, Kyle, do you think there's a place for you?
At least right now, no. I mean, and for a lot of those very same reasons. And Part of it for me is more what's going on at the federal level, though also with the Colorado Republican Committee and some of the things that are happening there. Right now, I don't feel like there is a place for me back in the party. And that's why I was kind of curious about your ideas and strategies on how to win seats back. Is part of the discussion that the party, for lack of a better word, needs to moderate some of its views or go back to some of those traditional Republican values in order to pull people back in. I'm just curious if that's part of the solution.
And I apologize. I feel like we've kind of ambushed you here, and I apologize because listen, I think you're the solution, 100% the solution here. I think you got the right vision, the right idea, the right way to move this forward. My fear is it becomes hard for you to be able to do that based on everything you're dealing with at the state level and everything that you're dealing with that comes down from the federal level. But I want more of you. I want more reasonable sort of approaches. I don't say conservative, moderate, liberal, Democrat, whatever, but reasonable versus unreasonable. You get it. How do we get Rose Pugliese to be the face of this in Colorado?
I'm not really sure. I will say I am hoping to make some good gains in the House, and that can help elevate not just me, but all of us who are working so hard in this movement. Because in the end, and I've had this conversation, I still believe in the movement. I still believe in the Republican cause. It's why, I don't change to unaffiliated or, during special session, I would say that was the lowest point for me as a Republican because I, along with Senator Kirkmeyer, worked really hard on our limited vacation to come up with a solution, not perfect again, but a solution to bring forward during special session. And it was Republicans who attacked that plan more than Democrats. And I don't mind policies being attacked, but it definitely felt very... It wasn't the place I would have liked to have seen Republicans be. And in the end, Democrats killed that very quickly, and we moved on. But I will say, this job is incredibly hard, and especially being in the super minority. And I think we have seen that when we come together, we can win. We just have to, like you said, Mark, and like you're saying, Kyle, we have got to make sure everybody feels welcome in this party. And how we do that, I think, is still yet to be explored. But I will say, you're welcome in the House. So
I appreciate those sentiments, absolutely, and I know that our friendship goes back a lot of years, and I'm super honored that you're not only just a great friend of mine, but also somebody that I truly believe is in it for the right reasons and is trying to move policy in the right direction in the state of Colorado. So, keep swinging away and admire your tenacity this way. I mean, I've sort of like said, you can have it, right? I don't want to engage in party politics at all anymore because it's freaking ridiculous. Oh my gosh. I'm not going to say who it was, but I was kind of standing in the lobby towards the end of the session, and I heard one of your colleagues, the oldest, whitest guy around, talking about race issues in the floor of the state house. I'm like, what in the heck is he doing? This is ridiculous. Just absolutely ludicrous. And but here we are. It's what we do. So God love you for taking the task on. Thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for doing all you do. And, from here on out, what I'm going to do is just put behind me, instead of, my cool law degree, I'm going to put back there, Rose for governor. How about that? That's how we're going to promote it.
That's
Thank
great.
you. I think I'm not really sure, but I am so incredibly honored to be with both of you today in your inaugural podcast. Thanks for inviting me and for the conversation.
Rose, it was so nice meeting you.
It's so nice to meet you.
Any parting shots? Would you like to call us a dumbass or something? I mean, we deserve it.
No,
She doesn't know me. She knows you, so she could call you that. But she got to get to know me better before she can call me that, I think.
Yes,
Okay.
I am focused on policy, not people. Really appreciate the policy conversations.
All right. Well, we
That's
can talk
great.
about my dumbass policy positions at a later date.
That's a different
That's a
conversation.
different story.
Nice.
Oh.
Well, hopefully we can have you back on after November and talking about some good news.
Yes, I pray for victories.
Some pickups in the house, that's for sure. A little trivia question for you, Kyle. When was the last time Republicans had a net gain of a seat in the state house?
2010.
Oh, we've already talked about this, haven't we? You're right.
I read it.
2010.
I read it in an article.
2010. We have not had a net gain of seats in the state house. That's not moving the right direction.
Yeah.
No, we've got a great opportunity this year.
Yep, and you're going to bring us back. You're the Moses of Colorado Republican politics. You're going to bring us to the promised land.
Yeah, we'll see. I do think God put me here for a reason, so hopefully that's the reason.
All right.
Great.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, Rose. We'll see you later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.